So it's Friday, it's uHangout time, and I'm joined with Nick Wahlberg. Hey Nick, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Warren?
I'm very good, Nick. It's good to talk to someone else from the States today. So how's things in the States?
Good. We can't complain. Yeah, we're here on the East Coast, so it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're ready to talk a little Umbraco stuff. We're excited to announce a couple of things today and just show off a few things that we've been working on related to some of the community projects and just the internal client projects and stuff like that too. So yeah, it's cloudy and pretty dreadful outside, so I'm happy to be inside, I guess.
Fantastic. Sounds like London.
Yeah, probably, right?
Yeah. So obviously, as always, we get people to do kind of a bit of an introduction or kind of background on their base of Umbraco. So kind of how long have you been using Umbraco, Nick?
So I've been using Umbraco for a while, personally, since probably about 2008, back when it was right on the cusp of going from 3 to 4. I got a client project that basically required me to start Umbraco, and I had no idea what it was, never heard of it. But it was one of those things that it was just kind of trial by fire type of thing.
Fair enough.
Get into it, and I ended up going down to Doug's house when he was still in the U.S. We did like a one-on-one kind of level 1 thing, almost like a training with him down in Kentucky. So that was fun. It was very informative. It was kind of a good kickstart to the whole thing, and then that led to more projects, which led to the level 1 and level 2 certifications, which were only in Denmark at the time. So I was over there for those, and the rest is kind of history. I guess it's all since then it's all been Umbraco really. I used to do just the custom .NET applications and things, and always used to you know how it goes. You code your own thing. You reinvent the wheel every time. That sort of thing. So,
exactly. We've all been there. We've all had our own internal CMS at one point or another.
Exactly. Yeah. Who hasn't? So Umbraco really kind of saved our skin a number of times for those types of projects and stuff. And of course, since then we've done a lot more complex implementations and stuff like that. But the first project was really actually rather large. It was a hospital intranet that had to support 150 contributors, 30,000 nodes, a lot of sort of critical type of policies and procedures for clinical stuff. So it was kind of a good trial, not just to do like a small brochureware site, but it actually had to work. It had to be a kind of a business process implementation and all those things. So as you know, I mean, Umbraco kind of rises to that challenge every time. I mean, it's just it's a fantastic platform and API type of implementation.
Exactly, you're spot on there. So obviously, like you said, you've been using it for a while now. What was the reason that you decided to use it or even come across it? Was it just by chance, or was it? It
was actually our client at the time, which was Northeast Hospitals. They're now Leahy Clinic, which is one of the larger healthcare organizations here on the East Coast Northeast. They basically came to us and said, this is what we're using, and we've read up on it. It looks pretty cool. It's brand new. Let's just go with it. And so it wasn't really a sort of a choice from our end. It was just something that kind of fell in our lap, and we had to kind of run with it. So that's really why. And then, of course, the reason why we stuck with it is because of all the flexibility. And we've done a couple of Drupal sites. We've done a fair number of WordPress sites, over the years as well. But it's always that, kind of box you in, do it this way, here it is, here's the template, so it's just from our sort of the freedom of design and all of those things. And I think those are kind of the biggest things that people usually talk about, right, is that you're not boxed in, you're not required to do certain markup and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming from a front end sort of world myself, that's one of the huge benefits of it. So
yeah, definitely. Like you say, it's nice that a CMS doesn't dictate to you your markup and things like that. So it's
exactly,
it's fantastic. So you've got a few demos for us today, I hear.
I do, yes, I do. So a couple of things. We've been actually, I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit. Rusty and Jason haven't even seen this yet. So
fantastic.
So if they're watching, I apologize, guys. We weren't able to kind of time it this week. It's been a super busy week from our end, and I'm sure they've been super busy as well. But we wanted to polish off a couple of things before we showed it to the team, and of course, now we've kind of come up on the uHangout, and I thought it was kind of a good thing to demo. I know you did a hangout with them a couple weeks ago. So some of this is going to be familiar to those who saw that and those who have seen Marcello. But basically what we've done is we've developed a PayPal plugin for a payment provider, which we're kind of excited about. It's it's in some ways it's our first collaborative project in the community, and what better to start with than Marcello? I mean, obviously, for those who have seen that, Marcello is a real kick-ass e-commerce platform. It's going to be, I think it's really going to take off. They've done an awesome job with the development and the setup and all that stuff, and so kudos to Mindfly and to ProWorks and all those guys.
Yeah, no, they've done a fantastic job. So yeah, I'm very excited to kind of see what you've done and how you've implemented this PayPal provider.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and start with sort of the front end demo.
Okay.
Go ahead and share my desktop.
2 seconds. It's just loading.
Yep.
Yep, I can see it.
All right, excellent. So, obviously familiar to everyone, the Umbraco interface. Let's start off by buying some kittens, I guess.
As always.
As always, we got to start with the kittens. And so yeah, so this is we're not going to talk too much sort of generically about Marcello. Obviously, Marcello is an e-commerce platform. It's built on the fundamentals and foundation of Umbraco. So it's very, very flexible in terms of its UI, in terms of its implementation, all the things like that you're used to seeing from Umbraco. So while we are used to that kind of paradigm, if you will, from a development standpoint, working with Marcello specifically was kind of new, but again, very familiar just because of the way that they've implemented and modeled everything after the Umbraco core. So
yeah.
So let's just go ahead and just add a couple of things to the cart and go through. Go back.
Wow, that was a pricey kitten. $600.
Oh, this one is even more pricey. Yeah, this is Mike's favorite one, the terrific tiger.
Won't be buying from your shop anytime soon.
I know. Let's do 4 of those just for kicks. Let's do 3 of these. All right, excellent. So standard process. We've all seen this before. We're going to just fill in some bogus information at this point. So up until now, the checkout process is really kind of a cash or check only. Okay. I know Rusty's been working on authorized.net as well. I don't know what stage that is at this point, but of course all of these things are coming together now, and the more contribution you get from the community, obviously the faster this thing is going to be able to go to production and be put to use. So
yeah, exactly.
So that's the other reason why we're excited to work on this, because we can totally see ourselves using this, so why not contribute it a little bit to it, So
yeah, no, it's exactly it's kind of the Umbraco model in terms of contribution back to a project. So it's fantastic to see you guys have kind of already got stuck in at such an early point and already contributing something back to a project.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean I saw this for the first time at US Fest in Vegas, and it was just like okay, no, that's a no-brainer. Let's do it, So,
yeah.
All right, so we're just going to go through this, and so now that we get to the payment part, we'll see that we have not only the check-in, cash on delivery cash, but we have the PayPal option, and this is a PayPal Express integration. Mm-hmm. So basically, it takes you through the standard PayPal process that we've all seen before. So, summary, we're going to go ahead and click Place Order.
Yeah.
And we got a couple of polishing things here, like we want to obviously put some kind of indicator that we're processing, and we're not just sitting there waiting. So here it is. This is our sandbox store, Constantine Merchant. Yeah, our store. Very nice. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with this kind of predefined buyer account that we have as part of the sandbox. And before we actually process the payment, let's jump into the Umbraco interface here and take a quick look at the order. So now that we've actually placed the order, it's going to be registered in the system, and we're going to see that this $61,000 cat order is unpaid. So at this point, we've logged in. We've logged into PayPal. We have our payment options. Obviously, you'll see whatever you have registered for your account. In this case, we're using our bank account. We have the summary here. We can see the line items that we've put into our cart. Of course, any tax or any shipping additional line items will be added here as well.
Okay, cool.
Click Continue. And basically what this is going to do is now going to come back and it's going to do basically a capture payment in the Marcello system. So here's our confirmation. We've been redirected. We get our branded, confirmation, order confirmation. Any emails, of course, that will be sent on the background. All of the processing kind of happens on the Marcello side once we click that button. So
excellent.
So now, if we go back to the orders, I'm just going to click to refresh. This $61,000 order has now been paid, and if we click into it, we can see that PayPal processed it, and it's good to go. Excellent. So now we can go and fulfill it and do all those things. So that's really, I mean, that's the quick and dirty, like that. It works. It's there.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So how easy is it to, one, plug that in? So say I've downloaded Marcello and I want to use your PayPal provider. How do I go about adding that in? Is it just a new DLL? Is it an Umbraco package that I install? What do I need to do?
Yeah, this is really just what So we have this concept of plugins for Marcello, just like we're used to with Umbraco. So it's really a plugin that you would download and install, and basically it's all just code and Angular, right? So it's really at the end of the day, that's kind of how all of these things come together. So if we look at once we've installed our plugin, or once we've copied our plugin into our distribution or installation, what we're going to get here is we're going to get the PayPal payment provider option under the gateway providers, and then we can choose to activate this. In this case, it's already activated, so we get the deactivate option. But you'll notice that the configuration is all done through the UI here. So if I click on this edit, I'm going to get the standard dialog. I'm going to input all the information that PayPal is asking me to, or that PayPal's already sent me, like the account, username, API password, and signature, and all those kind of security goodies that you usually see in any API integration, right? Yeah, exactly. Save that, and now when I go to payment, I'm going to see this PayPal payment provider as an option. And I can further edit some settings here. This is really just the name and the description. But once that's in place, that's really it. You click on add a method, and that's basically going to allow you to select whatever gateway providers you've added to the system, whether it's authorized.net, PayPal, or what have you. There's obviously numerous additional ones that should and will be developed, and we'll probably tackle a couple more of these if we get sign off from Rusty and the guys too. So.
No, fantastic. So obviously now we've seen how to kind of use it. Is it possible to show us how easy or complex it was to kind of actually code it or implement it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in sort of in all fairness, I didn't do any of the coding here. I'm just taking
take the credit. Just take the credit, Nick.
Yeah, I'm taking the credit. So Konstantin and Alexei, who are on our team, have been working together on this, and they've done a great job. But to be honest with you, I mean, everything is so well stubbed out and defined. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but just the way that it's been modeled and after Umbraco, and the way that we're used to just being able to not have to learn the core of a product in order to use it. It's the same thing with Marcello as well. So we have our basically our Git repo, obviously, and I'm just going to show you two files because it's really I mean, at the core of it, there's a solution and there's all the stuff around it. But the core of it is really just the two files. There's really sort of the PayPal payment processor, which is really all of the things like process payment, capture payment, get payment details. And then there's the confirmation that we saw, where we saw that little spinner, which again still needs a little bit of work, but it's really just the actual capture of the payment once we process that from PayPal. So what we were doing here is we have this class, and the core of it is really this process payment, which allows us to pass the information back and forth and talk to PayPal in this case, or whatever service is that you talking with. So all of this stuff is really just set up already. So it's really just a matter of sort of implementing these methods, and working with, again, not understanding necessarily how all this works, because at the core of it, and we sat through some detailed demos with Rusty and Jason, and it's a really complex system with invoicing and multiple payments and catalogs and warehouses and all of that stuff. But luckily, we don't need to understand all of those things in detail in order to do this, because it's all there. So we just need to understand what the endpoint looks like, and then work with that and pass the information back and forth. All of the things that are required are already obviously stubbed out and ready to go for us.
So was the project well documented already in terms of implementing this for you guys, or was there kind of a lot of communication back and forth with Rusty and the gang? In kind of what you needed to provide and kind of what kind of code you needed to write?
Yeah, I mean, they've done a really good job with the documentation so far. I mean, obviously with any project, that's you try to do that in parallel, but it's always they actually had a big talk about this at US Fest about the documentation piece because of the complexities of the team dynamics and the changes in code over time and things like that. So while they do have good documentation, we learned a lot just by doing Skypes with Rusty and with Jason, just to say like, okay, here are the things, just kind of like point and clicks, and kind of walk through. So that was really helpful. So we really didn't spend a lot of time browsing through documentation, just because, again, the simplicity of this, and once you understand the high level kind of integration points of the API, it's really not that complex. So of course, the more sort of complicated functionality that you want to develop, of course, the more you'll have to know with the product. But in this particular case, we didn't really need to. So.
No, fantastic.
But I know they're spending a lot of time and effort on that. So
yeah, I know they are. I was just curious about obviously this is kind of probably the first kind of plugin that's been kind of released for Marcello or is in progress.
Right.
Yeah, I was just wondering if how much hand holding was done from the guys, and how much you kind of done by yourself just by reading documentation or just by kind of exploring the APIs.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has been exploring. I mean, they've been super helpful in terms of just offering their time and stuff. And we've had some scheduling conflicts, which is why they haven't seen this before you guys have. So,
fair enough, yeah.
But we'll be putting and committing all of this stuff, so we can share it, of course.
Fantastic. So you said we obviously got this class here. So what is the other file that we need?
So the other file is really something that we're also working on refactoring, but basically it's super simple, right? It's really just all it is just a for all intents and purposes just an HTML file. And it sits as part of our plugin, and this is the callback that we're telling, basically passing to PayPal to say, all right, once you're done with your payment, call this URL. And all this URL is right now, and again, we've done this in jQuery right now because we're still a little bit green with the whole Angular piece, as most people have been, I think. Yeah. So one thing we want to do is refactor this and just make it all Angular, so we have less, fewer dependencies and stuff like that, obviously. But right now, all this does is it basically just loads this. It comes back and does an AJAX, just a post, basically to the Marcello core capture payment methods, and basically passes in all of the keys that are part of that. So invoice keys. So these are all things that were generated by the system, passed to PayPal, and then passed back, right? So, okay,
so it's just kind of like a proxy as such. You're getting you're getting data back from PayPal, and then you're posting that data back onto Marcello's API endpoint.
Exactly, and then Marcello basically passes back a redirect, and we just do a windowed allocation today just to kind of show that that branded order confirmation page. So
no, fantastic.
So it's really, I mean, again, at the sort of the high level sort of 10,000 foot view, it's really just a few files and a few items to integrate, and the biggest thing is just working with whatever endpoint you're implementing. So. Mm-hmm.
So I presume this is just a DLL, or where do these kind of files live?
So this actually lives as a folder in the plugin structure. So in the app plugins in your Umbraco installation is where this is going to kind of reside and work with. Just very similar to how we implement and do property editors. This is all. For the most part, I mean, there's definitely DLL work behind the scenes, but as far as the copying and pasting the UI goes, it's all just the Angular piece and just installing this as a copy and paste job, really.
Okay, fantastic.
And then we have one of the things we haven't worked out yet, which is we're also a little bit new to, is the whole build process. So there's a pretty nifty build process that I couldn't speak a lot to, just because I don't understand it all that well.
Fair enough.
that actually packages this stuff up for us. So what you'll see here, like for example, right now we're doing app plugin Marcello. So this is all stuff that we need to kind of work out, and that'll require some back and forth with the Marcello team for sure to kind of hash out best practices and things like that. We want to make sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's obviously in very early stages. Right. So there's obviously still things to kind of figure out and learn. So.
Correct. Yep. Exactly.
Cool.
So that's Marcello, really. I mean, that's our little plugin project. We spent, just sort of in order of magnitude, we've probably spent about 40 to 50 hours all told. on this, just sort of as a reference point. You know, it's you know, between meetings and talking and, you know, development and exploring and stuff like that. You know, that's about where we're at, just so people understand kind of what the effort looks like. So.
Okay, no, that's understandable.
Yeah.
So obviously, I presume you've actually got a Michello or an e-commerce project on that's kind of geared you up to kind of create this plugin.
Yeah, we actually have several e-commerce projects, and this came really at the right time, because we were part of a selection process probably about 2 months ago. It started more like 4 months ago, but the whole thing came together about 2 months ago, where we went up against 3 or 4 other vendors here in the U.S. and it was all about technology selection and obviously in vendor selection. So. We were pitching. This wasn't really on our radar at the time, because we'd never even seen it. So we were pitching, obviously Umbraco. The request, the RFP was really about, you know, WordPress and WooCommerce and a couple other things. It's not a huge project. It's not a $100,000 implementation. It's more like a $20,000 implementation or less.
Okay.
Right? So, the shopping cart is not that big. It's got probably about 500 products in it. It's not.
It's a reasonable size, though.
A reasonable size project, yeah, exactly. So, had we known about this, I mean, this would have been, you know, very, very easier for us to pick. Again, it still has some work left to do, and, you know, from a production standpoint, you know, we're missing a few things like that. But I think, you know, we ended up basically going with this WooCommerce implementation, because that's kind of what the client had been used to with WordPress and stuff like that. So we ended up not doing a project that we really didn't want to do. Luckily, we got the project, but yeah, exactly. So that's the other reason why we want to push this a little bit, because, you know, as more of these projects come in, we want to use this. You know, we don't want to use WordPress or I know there are other options too with Umbraco, and we looked at a lot of them, and you know, the community was super supportive too when we went out and kind of looked for information and all that stuff. But having this as kind of a, you know, an option, not only the power of the product, but also the fact that it is open source and available and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a big difference, and it's a lot of effort's been put into it, and it definitely shows just by showing how easy or relatively easy it was to kind of add a new payment provider with just a handful of files. So
it's very, very strong. And of course, there's, you know, there are other plugins, right? There's the shipping, you know, there's just a bunch of other sort of areas that can be contributed to in a very siloed fashion, you know, without having to be, you know, a complete Marcello expert like those guys are. I mean, they've been living and breathing this thing for a year at least, I think. So it's you know, they know it well, and they'll be the first ones to say too, listen, give us feedback. You know, what did we do wrong? What did we do right? And stuff like that. So.
Of course. So obviously now we've discussed Marcello. You mentioned before we started that you've got some other demo that you'd like to show.
Yeah, we got this really, really ugly demo that I'd like to hear people with.
That's not selling it, Nick.
I know. No, so we've been working on this project for a little bit. It's for one reason or another, we end up doing a lot of intranet projects.
Okay.
And some of them are actually most of them are for financial institutions like banks and hospitals and things. So we deal a lot with security, and there's as you know, a lot of organizations don't, you know, allow, you know, social media internally on their networks and things like that for obvious reasons. And so we just did this project for a local bank here in Rhode Island, in Providence actually. And they really wanted the ability to have people socialize on their internet, make that kind of a hub and a point of kind of conversation, and not do emails or, you know, the water cooler type of talk stuff. And so they said, listen, we need Facebook, but we can't allow Facebook, so we need to build our own thing. So we built this solution, which is basically what we call the wall, and it's really just kind of a conversation piece for internal employees. It's this particular demo is not, but the internet piece is all Active Directory integrated, so we get all the usernames and all that stuff, and you know, there's no login required and things like that, of course. But basically, this is a you know, obviously Umbraco. It's SignalR, it's Masonry, it's a couple of of different libraries put together. But it's allowed us to build this, what I think, I mean, right now, like I said, it's not exactly the prettiest thing you've ever seen, but the UI is kind of, obviously independent from the functionality here. So
yeah, exactly.
So it's, so basically, so what it allows us to do is it allows us to post comments, right, which is pretty standard, upload files and things like this. We can have conversations going in between, certain posts and things like that, and relate back and do likes and do all the things that you can do, sort of rudimentary kind of things that you can do with Facebook. Yeah. And what we're doing right now, and like I said, there's a lot more to behind this whole thing. But what we're trying to do is basically put this in sort of a release-ready state where we can actually put it out to the community. Because I'd love to, I don't know if there's interest in this sort of thing, but we found it pretty fun to work on, and it's something that I think we'll end up using on a lot of other internet implementations as well, just because of the sort of the nature of the whole social media thing and the restrictions that.
No, exactly. I can totally understand the selling points for kind of those kind of organizations or companies.
And we did the notification, like in-browser notifications, for new comments and things like that. So it's a pretty complex system. And then from a back-end perspective, this is also something that we can't wait to work on. Hopefully, we'll find some time and budget to do this. But right now, this is just a standard .NET grid, for editing and stuff. Yeah, obviously, we'd like to turn this into all Angular and just make it all sort of fit the dynamics and sort of fit the bill of the new Angular backend and do all that stuff too. So
of course. So how is the kind of the data being stored? Is it actually content nodes? Is it kind of a separate database table? How you decided to kind of make that decision?
Yeah, right now we decided to have this as its own table. So it's a table in the same database as our Umbraco implementation, and it just lives as in that format. We have the images are stored on disk. They're not blobs or anything like that. So it's a pretty sort of simple, sort of separated implementation right now.
That's I would say that's a good decision.
I think so too. Yeah, it kind of feels that way.
So did you decide to use something like Petapoco or the implementation of Petapoco that's available in Umbraco to kind of help you structure your kind of your database or your table for kind of hydrating the model back and forth and things like that? Was that decided?
Yeah. So this was built in 6.1 or 6.3, I think, or 603. So we had we just did a real quick just like stick it into Umbraco 7 for now kind of thing. Just for the purposes of this, but. It's all just entity, basically framework for all that stuff. So we didn't really get into all those details, but that's kind of what I want to do with this is definitely do a much tighter integration into Umbraco 7, and now that that's available, because that wasn't really started when we had begun this project. So
yeah, no, fantastic.
And actually, related to this too, we did an alert system as well, which I'm sure others have worked on as well. But it was all part of the same project, so we'll probably end up releasing that too. Because I know that the organization found that very helpful, because they're always looking to minimize email and communication and things like that. And the bank has branches kind of spread out all over the place, so they have security alerts that pop up for people when they're on the internet and things like that.
So where would the alert pop up in terms of the Umbraco back office? Are we talking about a browser?
We're talking about the front end. So if someone is browsing, I don't know, departments, or looking for somebody, or they're just on their homepage browsing stuff or events or whatnot, they get those little pop-ups and the tab flashes, and it does that notification that you kind of expect from things like Google Mail and things like that.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So I presume, like you said, you're using things like SignalR to kind of push those things down to the user.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is it's all just SignalR, like I said, masonry for the display of this thing. So it's we're trying to use obviously the standard libraries that people are used to and things like that too. So we have industry standards across all implementations. No,
that's fantastic. So this is this a work in progress then?
This is a work in progress. Yeah, it's just we have it implemented sort of crudely, in this one internet, but we definitely want to fine tune it, and we'll try to see if we can't put it out there. We're still getting used to the whole GitHub environment and stuff like that too. We're like we're an SVN shop, so we're trying to get the whole pull request scene and all of those things. It's all a little bit new. So once we get that in place, we'll start putting these things out for forking and all that stuff.
Excellent. That sounds fantastic, and I look forward to reading through the code and learning a bit more.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's my little smoke and mirrors show.
Fantastic. So as always, we've got a few questions before we kind of wrap up here today.
Sure.
So let's take a question from Lee Kelleher. So obviously you've written the kind of the Umbraco book, or contributed to writing the Umbraco book. But he asks, given the speed of technology shifts, do you think there'll be a future print edition of the user guidebook from Umbraco?
Good question. So we had a conversation with the publisher probably about 3 or 4 months ago. Doing obviously a re-release, because that book is basically good enough for Kindling today. It doesn't. It's so outdated, and it was outdated probably by the time it came out too, almost. So that is always hard. The publisher in this case, they said that they don't want to do any more releases of it just because it just didn't sell. Honestly, it didn't do very well in terms of the sales, but. I would definitely be interested in doing a project. I know I talked to a few people on Twitter, and I can't remember the names now, but some people reached out and said, "Hey, are you interested in doing doing an update or doing a digital release?" And that's something that I would be very interested in talking to folks about.
Yeah, I think that makes sense in terms of obviously the world that we live in terms of how things kind of move so fast that a digital version is probably the best way to go to keep the project alive, be it hosted on GitHub or similar, I suppose, to how Umbraco are doing their documentation with kind of Markdown and things like that.
Right.
So it's a kind of living, breathing documentation, but obviously a bit more written in a book format or kind of
chapter set up. Yeah. No, and I think that makes sense. I mean, the other thing to remember too is when that book came out, it was 2011, May 2011. The book was printed and released. The user base and the interest in Umbraco has grown tremendously right over the last since then. I mean, it's just exploded. So
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot more demand for that sort of thing now too. So I think it would be worthwhile to have kind of a collaborative to work on that. And if there's interest to do that, I would be more than happy to either spearhead or contribute or whatever to that kind of effort. Because I mean, it was a time-consuming but also a fun process, and I think it'd be even better obviously if the response and the need for it is there. So. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. So got a couple of questions from Ravi. So he asks, how did you find the collaborative process, especially when you're based in the East Coast and the guys from Michello are over in the West Coast? What were kind of the sticking points?
Yeah, no, I mean it's always just about scheduling, right? It's everyone is kind of knee deep in everything that they're doing on a daily basis. So I think that's really kind of the gist of it, is trying to get everyone on the same page. Skype, go to meeting, join me, whatever have you, is obviously a huge benefit and helpful. And our own team is so spread out, that we kind of work in that fashion all the time. So it wasn't really new to us to work with them. Like I said, I think we've had pretty minimal contact with them throughout the process, outside of the hours that were spent in the beginning to kind of go through the code and figure out what's what and the demos and all that stuff. And that's a testament to the work that they've done. Like I said before, I mean it's really their prep time and their sort of ingenious design, right, and modeling and all that stuff that has helped us be able to be pretty independent and autonomous in terms of doing the implementation. So that's been very, very helpful, and we love collaborating with them, obviously, because it's just good ideas everywhere, and I think we can kind of maybe hopefully contribute some of those ideas too. So
yeah, no, fantastic. So Ravi has another question. Is the PayPal documentation still appalling? I presume Ravi has some past experience that's not so good.
Yes, he must. Yeah, it's really hard to kind of dig through, and one of the things that we struggle with was which version of the whole PayPal payment process should we be doing, and and that was the lines that are drawn between the Express versus what the regular implementation are very, very thin and kind of blurred. So yeah, it's still hard to get through that. They need some help with documentation for sure.
But sounds like you've obviously figured that out and saved us the job or the hassle, and we can just use your plugin once it's finished and released.
Once it's there, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
I suppose we haven't got any more other questions coming, but I suppose just a quick question from me. Is there any relation to Mark Wahlberg at all?
Can't you see the resemblance? Look at this.
Oh, spitting devil.
Yeah, exactly. No, unfortunately not. We're close geographically, but since I grew up in Sweden, there's definitely no...
Oh, damn it. I thought you was going to say, like, yeah, he's my half-brother or something.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I get to hang out with him all the time, and yeah.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, we should probably try to contact them, see if we can't do their sites and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
I mean, come on, and there's some relationship there. Yeah.
Of course. It's been fantastic talking to you, Nick.
Likewise. Yeah.
And I'd like to wish you a good day, and we'll speak soon. I presume you're going to Code Garden?
Yes, we'll see you there.
Excellent, fantastic. I will see you at Code Garden.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Cheers, Nick.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.